It's a hotly debated topic in Ottawa and across the country these days. How secure is our immigration system? This after two men were arrested in Toronto in a terror plot inspired by ISIS, one of whom was allegedly in a video dismembering a prisoner overseas. Yet he somehow secured Canadian citizenship after that. And another man who was arrested in Canada on a student visa was trying to cross into the United States, where he was allegedly planning on carrying out a mass shooting and bombing at a New York Jewish center. But the government insists that the immigration system in place is sound.
Everyone who wants to come to Canada is screened.
Immigration Minister Marc Miller joins me now. Thank you so much for making time for us today, Minister. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Mercedes.
I was watching you at committee on Thursday, and you talked about the fact that you have some concerns about our immigration system, but overall, you said that it is safe, it is secure, and that you're proud of it. I think a lot of Canadians wonder how you can say that if you look at the last year alone, where there's been 4 separate individuals who have come to Canada either with the intent of carrying out terrorism or, in one case, assassinating successfully a Canadian citizen. So why do you say that you're satisfied with how the immigration system is and that you consider it safe?
Well, I think it's firstly important to take a step back and, I think, disabuse ourselves of the notion that sophisticated criminal networks, terrorists, are facing a hermetically sealed country. That isn't the case. It's why we have sort of a 3-stage process in our security systems, including work done abroad, work done at the border, and work done inside Canada. Am I entirely satisfied of where we are today? No, I don't think anyone in my position would pretend that, nor would the public safety minister. But I'm confident in the security processes as they stand today. I have also ordered my deputy minister to do an internal review of what has happened in a number of these cases and produce a report within the next 30 days to see if there are any things that has gone wrong, if there are deficiencies that we need to fix, if they are systemic, or if these are one-offs. It's cold comfort for anyone seeing these news announcements about people getting arrested. Know that our public safety agencies did their work in this case and were able to apprehend these individuals. I know that there's lots of questions that abound about what next or what happened. We're heavily constrained in being able to speak publicly about those because we don't want to fetter the ability of the prosecution, of the Crown, to prosecute its case. So that's where we are today. But it doesn't mean that we are entirely satisfied. We never are. We need to have a security apparatus that is constantly evolving. But we are much better off today than we were even a few years ago, before we were using biometrics, for example. And I think that's something that Canadians can take some comfort in.
I mean, you're talking about biometrics and recently, but a number of these folks did come to Canada recently, and there don't tend to be biometrics on people who are not high-level terrorists. Someone low-level has been recruited by ISIS. I mean, in the case of the one individual, there was a video of him, but the biometrics or facial recognition software obviously didn't kick in, or it was never seen by Canadian authorities. We also know that, and we've known this since 2023, between 2014 and 2019, Ottawa let in half the people who were red flagged in the security system for coming to Canada. But immigration officers made the decision to override those red flags and allow them in. In the case of some of these individuals, they initially were denied a visitor visa because there was concerns, yet they got in. So are you satisfied with how your department is using the information from security assessments to decide whether or not people should be come in? If we've got 2 cases here at least of early concerns allowed in and then try to carry out terrorism or assassinations.
You know, our screening process, Mercedes, is progressive in nature. It depends on any flags that are brought to our attention. A red flag doesn't mean that the person is a terrorist. It means that there is evidence that requires a little more scrutiny. It's very difficult to speculate about facts that are not proven or not in evidence yet. I think we do have to respect, for the safety of Canadians, the integrity of the prosecution's ability to fully prosecute the case and not be compromised by people like me speculating. or entering into evidence facts that haven't been proven.
And I understand that, but I think the question is about why immigration is deciding to allow the numbers of people in who are red flagging, how many more might be out there, and it goes beyond just that number. It goes to sources I've spoken to who work at Foreign Affairs, who work at CSIS, who work at the RCMP, some of whom work in your own department, and they say, look, we don't have the inland enforcement abilities to track down people when they stop showing up for school, for example, on a student visa. We don't have the material on the ground to make the decisions about who people are in the way that many of our allies do. This is actually becoming a point of contention with the Americans, with the Brits, who are afraid that someone will come to Canada and use that, as we saw in the case recently, to try to enter into the United States. So do you think that the security system that your government has in place is sufficient? And why haven't the warnings from so many people been heeded over the years?
Yeah, I couldn't comment on your sources without having spoken to them myself. This is not a uniquely Canadian challenge. We always have challenges, obviously, with resources, and this is a constant conversation with our security agencies to make sure they are properly resourced. In this case, let's remember that they did their job. Let's also remember that one of the individuals in question came through the United States on a student visa. So this is a North America perimeter challenge that we have, and we have to constantly be evolving the security parameters that we apply to screening individuals and making sure that we're constantly adapting to threats themselves that are adapting. So again, ongoing conversations. We can never be satisfied. People like me in the position that I hold can never be satisfied. And we have to constantly make sure that we're working to thwart these threats to Canada, because there are people that don't have the best intentions of Canada at heart that are trying to get in the country.
How do you respond to people who say that the government has failed to heed the security warnings that it's been receiving for years for political reasons? Jason Kenney recently alleged you were trying to build a voter bloc. We spoke to Kelly Sundberg. He's a former officer with the Canada Border Service Agency. He's now an academic who teaches. He says the government was warned many times, but the political order was always speed it up, get people in faster, make it happen, versus being on serious security checks.
I have a lot of respect for Mr. Kenney, particularly as he occupied the role that I occupy today. He's in fact the architect of a number of the programs that are currently still in existence within my department, Mercedes. I would say to that that it's a bit of political hooey. The people that we make Canadian citizens and the privilege of becoming Canadian citizens is one that has nothing to do with their presumptive political affiliations. All the citizenship ceremonies that I go to, I am consciously apolitical, and it's not about creating blocks of voting immigrants for the Liberal Party of Canada. That's absolutely ridiculous. It's for other more important things. One, first and foremost, becoming Canadian citizens and being proud of who they are as Canadians, but also for economic reasons. That's thanks to immigrants that we avoided 2 recessions. That's something that is exceedingly important. And there can never be any compromise with our national security. And that's what we constantly strive to, and our security agencies constantly strive to.
In the case of Mr. Khan, who was the most recently arrested person accused of trying to carry out a terror attack, he was here on a student visa. Did he at any point claim asylum?
The chronology that we submitted, Mercedes, to the committee is the only aspect of his timeline and time in Canada that I can comment on.
So you can't tell us whether or not it's true that he claimed asylum while he was here?
I cannot.
Can you tell us how many international students do claim asylum while they're here on student visas?
There's a growing number, Mercedes, and it's frankly quite alarming. Given the volumes of people that come to this country, in theory, with the proper financial capacity to live and to pay their tuition fees, which are 4 times what Canadians pay. But it's becoming an alarming trend. We see that it happens often within the first year of the time they're here. I would say often for less valid reasons than others, notably to drop the tuition fee down to Canadian rates. There's some opportunism that's being used and exploited there. It goes to the point that I've been making to universities, colleges, to make sure that their recruiting practices are better, that they make sure that the type of people that we are attracting under what should be a world-class student visa program is one where people don't turn around and, after they've paid all sorts of money to come here and claim asylum. this is a program that was aimed international excellence and not a backdoor entry into Canada for whatever reason. And that's, part and parcel of the reforms that I've been doing over the better part of the year to make sure that we have a better international student visa system, including detecting fraud at the outset, which is immensely critical, but also looking at the timeline and making sure that of stay that students are here, and making sure that they are properly accompanied by the institutions that take so much money from them and in theory are supposed to give them the best education in the world, but looking at the after effects of that and how that impacts the Canadian economy and